Olá a todos e a todas. Esse é o Conversa com Autores, que traz para as telas um bate-papo com colaboradores da Stanford Social Innovation Review Brasil e especialistas brasileiros que nos ajudam a contextualizar textos traduzidos da edição americana. Eu sou Ana Cláudia Ferrari, editora-chefe, e hoje eu tenho o prazer de conversar sobre economia circular com a professora Nancy Bocken e Adriana Marotti de Mello. Nancy Bocken é professora de negócios sustentáveis da Universidade de Maastricht, na Holanda, pesquisadora-chefe do projeto europeu Circular X e fundadora da Home, uma startup holandesa e uma empresa circular sustentável. Na edição número 1 da Stanford Social Innovation Review Brasil, que está aqui na minha mão, essa aqui, Nancy Bocken assina o artigo Estratégias para adotar o modelo de economia circular ao lado de Tis Gerhards, em que discute as implicações do modelo e apresenta as melhores práticas. Para conversar com ela, convidamos a professora associada Adriana Marotti de Mello, coordenadora do curso de graduação em administração da Faculdade de Economia e Administração da Universidade de São Paulo e editora da Regi, a revista de gestão. Essa conversa vai ser feita em inglês e legendada. Welcome, Professor Nancy. Welcome, Adriana. It's an honor to have you both here today with us. So maybe we should start with this concept, circular economy, which we hear very often, but we aren't really sure what it means. So my first question is this, Professor Nancy, what is circular economy?
Thank you, first of all, Anna, for inviting me to the session. It's a pleasure to be here today and talk to you in English, unfortunately, but I will do my best to explain some things. So first of all, what is circular economy? It's really a visionary perspective on what a sustainable future could look like. It's become quite a popular concept also in business, policy, but also inspiring to individuals. It's really about value retention rather than value destruction of products and materials. So rather than thinking about our current linear economy, where things break down prematurely, so we need to dispose of products too early. We have products that last longer in the circular economy, can be repaired and upgraded, and eventually recycled. So those are some of the primary principles of a future circular economy.
Great. Okay. So if you could tell us, how has the shift from the traditional linear business models to circular business models occurred? I mean, a perspective, a historical perspective on that, and maybe the milestones of this path and the thinking that led to where we are today. It would be great for us to have this overview.
Great. Yeah, circular economy as an idea is not new. So we've recognized already since probably the 60s or the 70s that we live on a finite planet with finite resources. So we need to be careful about how we use those resources. The idea of climate change is also not new, so we've known about that. So what we've done so far is focus a lot on things like recycling and waste management. Also removing toxic materials from our products. So those are some of the things that we've worked on. Unfortunately, some of the other things are actually going in the wrong direction or have been going in the wrong direction. So we see that across the board, things like electronics, like our mobile phones or computers, are decreasing in lifetime. So we need to go up in those lifetimes again and create durable products. So some of the foundations of circular economy are in the legislation around eco-efficiency and labeling, recycling and waste management. And more recently, for instance, in Europe, we adopted the circular economy package that was in 2015 as part of the Green Deal. And as part of that circular economy package, we're not only focusing on recycling, but also on product longevity, durability, availability of spare parts, for instance, the right to repair. And it's not purely a European concept. Across the world, countries are looking into that. Also in China's 5-year plans, circular economy has also featured for quite some time. So it's not a purely European thing either.
Okay. I think maybe this would be a good moment for Adriana to give us a context of where Brazil is in terms of circular economy. please.
Yes. Thank you very much, Anna, for the invitation. Thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss here with Professor Bocken about these issues. It's a pleasure to be here. It was a pleasure to read the article and to talk about the circular economy in Brazil. I think one landmark for Brazil was really the national policy on solid wastes. It was established in 2011 after more than 10 years of discussions in the legislative houses, but only in 2011 it came to as a law, really. And it's kind of an umbrella law that gives uh, a way of direction for companies to work on, especially waste management and recycling. So I think in Brazil, we are still somehow, if we think about in law and legislation and regulations, we are a step behind Europe and China, certainly. But in terms of practices in companies and everyday life, I think driven by mostly by necessity, I think, and by financial constraints, I think we live in a kind of circular environment, we can say, as we can say. For example, about the duration of products. Driven by necessity, really, we see the second-hand market, for example, by cars here in Brazil, is much larger than the new cars markets. We estimating that in last year, the estimation of the market for second-hand cars was 6 times larger than the market for 0 kilometer cars. So that's huge. So these practices are spread among our society, especially in middle, lower middle, and working classes. That's our majority of our population. So I think it's overall we have this in terms of law and legislation, regulation. We are far behind, but in terms of practices and businesses, especially small businesses, I think we have some good examples also about circular practices and economy.
Yeah. So I just, it made me remind, Adriana, that there was a research, Nancy, by the industry of CNI in Portuguese, Confederação Nacional das Indústrias, in 2018, 19, a survey actually with the industries in Brazil, and they found out that 70% said they had never heard about the concept of circular economy, but a high percentage of industries had practices related to circular economy. So this is also what Adriana mentioned, that we are somehow practicing some of the actions involved in circular economy. So maybe I could, Nancy, in your article, you explained the strategies for a circular business model. Maybe you could detail a little bit what they are, and tell us if, I mean, do companies and the approaches is always to have the 4 strategies, or you can say that you are circular using practicing one or the other?
Yeah, great. So basically, what we found is that there are typically 4 key strategies in a circular economy. So first of all, it's narrowing the loop, so minimizing the resources per product. So that's really efficiencies, and that's a strategy we already see in the linear economy. The reason for this is that companies can also often save money when they use less resources or less energy. So that's why it's also already a popular strategy in the current linear economy. But then what is distinct about circular economy is, first of all, then also slowing the loop. So it's the second strategy, product longevity and lifetime extension. So creating more durable products, but also products that people can keep for longer through upgrading, repair, warranties, etc. So you're also enabled as a customer to look after or be able to look after your products for longer and slow the loop. Then we have recycling or closing the loop. So after many reuses of the products, you can eventually close the loop and recycle. So that can be enabled through, for instance, design for disassembly. So a product can easily be disassembled and materials can be taken and retrieved and recycled. And the final strategy is really quite new still in a business context, and it's called regeneration. So it's first of all about the use of renewables. Maybe that is not so new, using solar and wind energy. But the second part is how can you actually improve the natural environment as a business? Like how can you contribute to that? So companies more and more have realized that they're dependent on the natural environment to be in business also in the future. So things like regenerative agriculture are examples, but also some companies are doing afforestation. So to ensure that they also can use future forest products like wood in the future. So narrow, slow, close, and regenerate, where narrowing the loop or efficiencies are also quite common in the linear economy because they save money already. So I'm not sure whether that's clear.
Yeah, it is. And of course, everybody's going to read the article, so and they can go. They can have a better understanding of what you're saying. But what do you think would be the main driver for companies to start thinking differently, start transitioning for a new model, in your opinion, in your view?
Yeah, I think first of all, customers are getting a bit more critical. So they also see the effects of climate change in practice already. So they're also looking for new products, new innovations that can help them support, this lower carbon lifestyle. And it's also more convenient, right? If a product doesn't break all the time. So it's also a matter of convenience and customer service to have a circular and sustainable product. So first is the customers. Second is also changing legislation. You see it already also in Brazil, but in other parts of the world you see emerging legislation. Interesting example is also France that wants to combat planned obsolescence, so premature obsolescence of products. So it has to become forbidden, basically. It also sued Apple for slowing down the phones and making them obsolete. So it's quite serious about this legislation. So also being a future-proof partner and supplier, like you also see that companies are expecting more of others in the value chain. Like one company sets the sustainable goal, so everyone actually also has to do that, otherwise you're behind and maybe not a very suitable future partner anymore for collaboration. So that's important. More positive one also is being an attractive employer. So new generations of more aware people are coming to the labor market, so they're also expecting more of companies in terms of sustainability and circular economy. And finally, also innovation, finding new revenue streams. I think also through these circular models, you can make certain products more affordable, accessible, create actually better services. So I think there's also many innovation advantages to the circular economy.
Right. And Adriana, what would be, in your opinion, the main drivers for companies that are practicing circular economy in Brazil, or that have circular practices in their production processes or services?
I think there's a kind of a progressive transitioning path. I think the first step should be the narrowing cycle, for example. I think it's more attractive to attract companies to bring them into the circular economy, the sustainable discourse, because it appeals to the economic side that's really strong. I think in a second moment, the closing the loop, because also it talks about saving money, saving resources, saving energy, saving water. And then comes, I think, the more complicated way to attract because it talks about it calls for changes in the business models, like the slowing and the regenerative strategy. And I think the regenerative strategy, I think, would be really fit for the Brazilian context. Because here in Brazil, as Nancy may know, a huge amount of our national growth, its national economy comes from agriculture, especially what we call here agribusiness, that is driven by export, driven for the production of commodities such as soy and pulp, paper, and coffee and other commodity products. And this kind of agriculture is highly explorative in resources, in water, in land. What we see now that the Amazon burning is mainly to open up spaces for expanding area for growing cattle and soy exploration. So I think that could be a way of changing the mindset and changing the business model in agriculture. If we think about these regenerative strategies that we see many other businesses, some businesses in agriculture sector that uses these regenerative practices. I think it could be a huge opportunity for Brazilian businesses. And of course, driven by pressure that comes from our customers, especially countries like Europe that are our main customers, Europe, the US, and China. And I think with this pressure, external pressure, I hope that we can change this reality of this extensive exploration of our land. And of course, we have some opportunities also here that when we talk about renewables, I think it's important to mention that Brazil has technology, we have businesses here driven by ethanol. For example, in our auto sector, we do not have this pressure really for electrifying, for example, that it's occurring now in Europe, because we use ethanol. I think it could be an interesting way of achieving these sustainable goals with a local technology that's very suitable for our reality, I think.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Maybe we could now, I would imagine, Nancy, that Circular X and HOME are very dear projects to you. Can you tell us about them, please? The European project that you were leading as a researcher, Circular X, and HOME, your own startup initiative on circular business, please.
Yeah, great. So first of all, Circular X is basically a large-scale research project funded by the European Research Council, which typically funds more fundamental research. So basically what I wanted to find out is what is experimentation and how can it be used in a business context? Like we know experimentation is something in the natural sciences, in medicine, but experimentation could also be a very useful practice by businesses to transform their business model for the circular economy. So basically in Circular X, we create tools and methods and also new knowledge on what experimentation is in a business context, and basically how companies can experiment towards some of those circular service business models. So on our website, circularx.eu, we have a large and growing case study database. So we have over 60 cases at the moment, and we're striving to have at least 100 in different key sectors, such as food and mobility, electricity using appliances. And basically in that database, we want to sort of showcast what these companies are doing, what strategies they take, slowing and closing the loop, for example, what type of experimentation practices they do, also whether they measure the impact of some of those experiments. Can be anything from a second-hand market or pay-per-use model. We have all kinds of models displayed on the website. So we're right in the middle of it. So we still have a few years to go, at least till 2025. So watch this space in terms of circular experimentation research. So, and then about Homey. So Homey has been around since 2016. So it's a company that I co-founded actually with friends a couple of years back. And the idea was basically, there's a lot of talk about these new circular sustainable models, but there weren't so many in practice. So that really annoyed me. And also the fact that the impact of such models, people say that they could have a huge factor 10 improvement on environmental impact, but I couldn't really see the numbers anywhere on that. So that sort of motivated me to start a new business with a circular and sustainable business model. So it's called Homey Pay Per Use. So basically, Homey has a pay per use business model. And that means that, for instance, a washing machine you get installed for free in your own home, and you only start paying for it once you use the washing machine. And you pay less for the low temperature wash and more for the high temperature wash. And this is to sort of encourage more sustainable usage. So we wrote an academic article on that in 2018, and we basically found that through this pay-per-use model, people reduced the number of times they wash, and they also washed on average at a lower temperature. So even in already quite environmentally conscious groups, we saw a 25% reduction in environmental impact through the pay-per-use business model. And of course, pay-per-use is not a friendly model for everything. I haven't figured out the pay-per-use fridge yet. So we're also exploring different models, but we always want it to be circular. So products can be repaired, upgraded, etc. But also still the narrowing the loops strategy, things need to be efficient in the use phase. So also through other business models, we're now again experimenting with models that also have a lower impact in the use phase. So for instance, that you maybe don't open the fridge too often because that is unsustainable. And other models also, when we do a rental, how do we give customers advice on sustainable usage? So we have a circular and sustainable model. It's an ongoing business, and things are going well, and we hope to keep expanding both the business, but especially also the impact of the business. But the good thing is also large companies are also looking at us and trying to follow suit, and also maybe start exploring and experimenting with these models themselves.
Great. Okay. And Nancy, I was curious about this. I find it so fascinating that you are involved in so many fronts, like being a researcher and having your own startup. Was there an incentive from your university? I mean, is it common for the profile of a researcher in Europe or in Holland to act in so many fronts, or you are really special?
Well, I think it's a good question. I think academics are sort of should be at the forefront of knowledge and innovation, basically. So I think that should stimulate us all to think about how we can contribute to that and have a societal impact. When I started Homey, I was actually at TU Delft, so a technical university. And a lot of the people at that faculty had their own design agencies, mainly giving advice on design, because I was at the design faculty. But by nature or by degree, I'm not a product designer, but more a business scholar. So for me, it was quite a challenge. So basically, we were motivated to think about a demonstrator project to demonstrate your research. So I thought, how can you make a demonstrator of something intangible like a business model? But then I thought, well, maybe you can actually think about a good business, typical business, and that sort of started motivating me. And with a small demonstrator project at the university, it was literally rolling around 3 washing machines to the lab downstairs. And we had an engineer putting a tracker in it to enable it to make it a pay-per-use washing machine. And another, more software engineer looking at creating a payment platform. So it was very much also lean startup, getting together the people we knew, existing equipment, because of course we didn't have the funding. So only with this very small project, we made a proof of concept. And then we also went to the government to get a small loan, a convertible loan, to start this idea and turn it into a business. And that's what we did, became successful, got a private investor in, and the rest is history. But of course, it's not easy and it's not typical. I think, what is maybe perhaps more typical is that academics sometimes have a consultancy in extension of the work that they do.
Right. Adriana, you want to add something on that comment or on this?
No, I think it was great, this idea of how to bring the innovations and the knowledge that we produce in university to the society overall. I think it's a great challenge that we are facing now here in our university system, because we are until here. I work in the largest and the best university here in Brazil, but we are still extremely driven by pure academic production. Oh, the impact factor of the article that I publish, it's more important than the real impact in the society overall. It's slowly changing. Now our main state agency, the funding for research, is now asking, when we propose a project, okay, but what's the impact? How are you going to measure the impact of your results to the society and overall? And I think there are good examples that you are bringing, Nancy, and that we can learn with it. I think it's very important. And I think also the role of a publication like the Stanford Social Innovation, I think it contributes to this debate here in Brazil. I was talking to Anna just before we started here, that we have this gap. We work here in the university very apart from the businesses and the society overall. I think it could be a bridge, and I think it was really interesting to know about your company, about Circle X and for Homey, and how we can collaborate with our students. We have some examples at the University of São Paulo, many projects that are developed by students, and perhaps if we have some funding, but it's really not common, this kind of work, how to really to seed and to make it how to make it grow projects from students or professors, especially driven for circular economy. But we are slowly starting, and I think it could be a collaboration. If we can offer our cases that we are studying, we can work perhaps together. Could be.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
Very nice.
Adriana, going back to you, you mentioned the potential of social inclusion with the circular economy. Maybe we could talk a little bit about this and see what Nancy, how she sees this.
Yes. I think, as we were discussing, that dimension that's often not really well developed or even disregarded when we talk about circular economy is about the social dimension. How really can we make this transformation, this transition for a circular economy without leaving people behind, really? Especially when we mention in global south developing countries, where resources, economic resources and development comes from this extractive mining, agriculture, and exporting. And really how this transition could affect those societies, and how really to include, to make it inclusive for all kinds of levels in society, especially for this global south realities. I think this could be something that I really want to hear from you when we think about these four models, for businesses, strategies. How could businesses really help with this social inclusion for the circular economy transition?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Like even in Europe, when you read about the reason for this circular economy transition, it's not only the economy and the environment, but it's very much a social transition, job creation. It's expected that a lot of new jobs can be created through the circular economy because we have to regain repair practices again, like setting up new logistics, also refurbishment and remanufacturing. All these things that we may not be able to do yet. We need to regain those skills and practices and create new jobs around that. But that's one aspect of it. So jobs are very important, but it's also about the products and services that are available to people. And also, for instance, when you look at Africa, a lot of renewables are quite expensive, like solar panels. But then there's a lot of propositions around pay per use or pay per month or per week to make it more affordable. So you have two sides. So you have the renewable transition, but also potentially a circular transition, because if the ownership stays with the company, then it can also be upgraded when the technology improves. But it's not a responsibility of the individual, but of the company doing that through a service model. So you can also look at affordability. Also, maybe going back very briefly to the Homey example, some of our first customers, of course, we had to very much going for sustainability and wanting to support us in that, but also people who live, for instance, in social housing but couldn't afford a washing machine. And of course, we install it for free, and you only start paying when you do the laundry, so you can pay in very small installments. And the alternative before was either buying a washing machine, buying a second-hand washing machine, or renting it at quite a high price. So affordability is also a very big factor in some of those circular service business models when set up the right way. Like a lot of existing incumbent businesses think like, how can we make our most expensive product available in an expensive service model? But that's not how you should think. You should think like, how can we create a bigger market and accessibility to circular services, circular products, so we can create a more fair society where everyone has access to better products rather than just a small portion of the wealthy people, so to say.
Great. Nancy, I think we are coming to towards the end of our conversation, and I would love if you could give Brazilian readers, who are certainly people interested in finding solutions for most pressing social and economic challenges we all face. So if you could, of course, you in your article in the first edition of Stanford Social Innovation Review Brazil, you give several examples of companies, the challenges they face when testing or starting the transition to circular economy. So everybody should read that. But how could you invite people to engage with circular economy from an individual perspective and also from a business and governmental perspective towards a sustainable world? What would be your how would be your call on that?
Yeah, first of all, I often end my presentations with a quote, and that's the best way to predict the future is to invent it. So think about what you can do and what you can contribute. And that's a lot of things, like what we eat, how we move around, what we buy. This all matters in the sustainability transition. So people often think, how does my impact matter? But it's cumulative. It matters a lot. And you can also set the example and be a good example for others. So first of all, in terms of buying, you can consider the waste hierarchy. So first, avoid. So only buy basically what you need. It's sometimes a tough choice, but I think, consider before you buy it all. Buy secondhand or repair the stuff you already have. Consider swapping or sharing with others, with friends and family, or even to a business platform. There's plenty of platforms for all kinds of products nowadays for sharing. Secondhand is also a big market, apparently, what we heard earlier today. Then also what you eat, something that people don't want to reconsider, but eating meat and dairy are some of the highest impact things that we can do. So maybe eating less meat and dairy. And if you do eat sustainably sourced variants of those, and travel. I'm from a country where it's possible to walk and cycle a lot. We're quite a flat country here in the Netherlands, so it's also healthy. So maybe walking and cycling when you can rather than driving. It's healthier, but also more sustainable. Using public transport if possible at all, electric vehicles, all those things matter a lot. Maybe even car sharing if you can. So think about all your decisions. Think about the waste hierarchy or the slowing closing strategies and narrowing and regeneration strategies, what you can contribute in your own smaller environment, and also inspire others in the process. I think it's very good to have these conversations. We still have the choice now, but looking at all the impacts of climate change, it might not be a choice. It might become a necessity to behave differently. So it's good to be prepared and already start thinking about where can I have an impact already now and contribute positively to the sustainable and circular transition.
Good. Okay. And for business and government, any advice?
Yes, start experimenting. Like think about what you can already do. Like think about me and the 3 washing machines as an academic, so it wasn't even a business. So think about what small experiment you can set up. Like experiment might be anything, like online, trying via social media, tests of new propositions, like new offerings and ideas. You can do that. You can also start with a specific business line or specific product and see what tweaks you can make and set up a small experiments and learn from that. Like, is it desirable, feasible, and viable? Often starting with desirability, like what is good for the customer, and start experimenting and start challenging your current linear models. So that will be it from the business perspective. From a policy perspective, I think there's a lot of existing policy that you can build off from. Think about consumer policies like the right to repair and also product durability. Those are not things that are only good from an environmental perspective, but also from a customer advocacy perspective. So think about which existing policy you can link to, like customer protection. It's very near to that, right? That you have a durable product that can be upgraded, that you have spare parts. I think we can also learn. It's definitely not perfect, but there's a lot of strategies already in the circular economy package of Europe that could be transferred to other contexts as well. But take stock, like what Adriana already said, take stock of what already is there and see how you can build from that, and maybe also set up sector plans. So I think sectors also need clarity on what they can do, because the challenge for one sector might be quite different than for another sector, really.
Great. Adriana, would you like to give us your last remarks on this conversation?
Yes, it's been great to talk here, to discuss. It's really many different thoughts and ideas. And something that I would like to point out is that we, in our Global South context here in Brazil, I think we have many ideas of this experimentation, of course, driven by scarcity of resources, driven by money and financial constraints mostly, but I think they are good examples that could be used as also for policies and for new businesses experimentation. For example, once I was in a presentation from an innovation director from a multinational retail company that was here in Brazil, and he was really excited describing a new business that this company was setting in Europe of selling hygienic and products like detergents and shampoos in reusable packaging. And he was really excited. No, this is a really innovation, something new. And I was thinking, this was the regular business model for selling this kind of product, and it still is here in Brazil. If we go to the outskirts in the city of São Paulo or the smaller cities, it's a regular practice that for businesses here in Brazil that you bring your own bottle and fill it up with this kind of product. So it's something that we should really try to learn from it instead of changing these practices, as most we see here when we, for example, sometimes here in Brazil we say, we have to develop these new businesses. No, sometimes we have to learn from it, learn from the good practices that we have with this circular economy mindset. I think it would be really an opportunity for developing and changing our reality here.
Thank you. So thank you so much for Professor Nancy, Professor Adriana. It's been a great pleasure. I think we have all learned so much from this conversation, and everybody's going to read the article and try to learn more about circular economy, and especially from a personal perspective. I think that that's really important to be aware of that. So thank you so much. Good luck to you all, and hope to see you soon.
Great. Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you, Nancy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.